The signal came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Dr. Samantha Wright was sipping her coffee in the observation room of the Mountain View Observatory when her computer started beeping. At first, she thought it was just another space debris alert, but the pattern was different. The signal pulsed with a steady rhythm that she had never seen before. She put down her coffee cup and leaned closer to the screen. The numbers flowing across it made her heart beat faster. This wasn't random space noise. It was too organized, too precise. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard as she started running analysis programs. "Hey, Peter, come look at this," she called out to Commander Peter Collins, who was checking equipment at the other end of the room. He walked over, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. "What have you got, Sam?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder to look at the screen. "It's coming from Andromeda," she said, pointing to the data stream. "And it's not natural. These patterns are too perfect." Peter's face grew serious. He had worked with Samantha long enough to know she didn't get excited over nothing. "Have you checked if other stations picked it up?" She nodded, already sending messages to observatories around the world. Within minutes, replies started coming in. Everyone was seeing it. The signal wasn't just a simple message. It contained complex mathematical equations, unlike anything they had seen before. As more scientists looked at it, many said it was impossible to solve. The numbers seemed to break the basic rules of mathematics that humans had used for thousands of years. But Samantha noticed something strange. Late that night, while everyone else had gone home, she was still studying the signal. She had pulled up some old research about human DNA sequences, trying to clear her mind with something different. That's when she saw it. The patterns in the signal matched certain sequences in human DNA, but with subtle differences. She quickly called Peter, who was still in the building. "The signal," she said when he arrived, slightly out of breath from running up the stairs. "It's not just math. It's biology too. Look at this." She showed him how the signal's patterns lined up with DNA sequences. "It's like someone took our genetic code and turned it into a puzzle," she explained. Peter watched the screen, his expression changing from confusion to understanding. "You think someone out there is trying to talk to us, using our own biology. I think it's more than that," Samantha said. "This isn't just a hello, it's a test." Over the next few days, more signals appeared. They came from different galaxies, all carrying the same type of message. The world's governments couldn't keep it quiet anymore. News spread across Earth about the mysterious space signals that seemed to be challenging humanity. Scientists from every country argued about what the signals meant. Some thought they were a warning. Others said they were a trap. But Samantha kept working, convinced there was more to understand. A week after the first signal, she was called to a special meeting at the Lunar Research Station. The station hung in space like a silver spider web, Earth's blue sphere visible through its wide windows. In a large conference room, she found herself surrounded by the best minds on and off Earth. "Dr. Wright," the station director said, "we've been following your work on the signal patterns. We think you're onto something important." Samantha stood up and walked to the front of the room. She showed them what she had found, how the signals weren't just random puzzles, but a key to understanding something bigger. The room grew quiet as she explained her theory. "These signals," she said, pointing to her slides, "they're like a map, not just of space, but of knowledge itself. Someone out there is asking if we're smart enough to read it." Commander Collins, who had come with her to the station, spoke up from his seat. "And what happens if we are smart enough? What then?" Samantha looked out the window at the stars. "Then," she said softly, "we prove that humanity is ready for whatever comes next." The universe had sent them a challenge, and in that quiet room, floating above Earth, humanity was about to start figuring out how to answer it. Alice Martinez hadn't slept in 2 days. Her quantum computer lab at the Lunar Research Station hummed with energy as she ran test after test on the signal data. Dr. John Baker watched from his workstation, concern showing on his face as she downed her sixth cup of coffee. "Alice, maybe we should take a break," he suggested, but she shook her head without looking away from her screens. "Can't stop now, John. Look at these patterns." She pointed to a series of shifting numbers. "Every time we solve one part of the puzzle, 3 more appear. It's like it's learning from us." The quantum computer they were using was the most powerful ever built by humans. Its processors could solve problems that would take regular computers thousands of years. But even this machine struggled with the alien signal's complexity. Then something changed. Alice noticed that when they fed the signal through human DNA sequences, as Dr. Wright had suggested, the quantum computer started producing different results. The numbers weren't just random anymore. They began showing images. "John," she called out excitedly, "come see this." The first image was of a star system none of them recognized. Then another appeared, and another. Each image came with a set of coordinates, pointing to different places across the universe. Dr. Wright joined them in the lab when they reported their discovery. She studied the images carefully, her eyes wide with understanding. "These aren't just random locations," she said. "They're waypoints. Someone left these for us to find." Alice pulled up more data on her screen. "But we're not the first ones to see them, are we?" She showed them what she had found hidden in the signal's code. Messages from other alien civilizations. Some were thousands of years old, others more recent. All of them had tried to solve the same puzzle. "They all failed," John said quietly, reading through the translated messages. "Every single species that tried gave up or disappeared trying to complete this challenge." More scientists gathered in the lab as word spread about their discovery. They found that the puzzle wasn't just a test of intelligence. It was a challenge to prove that a species was ready for something bigger. Alice kept digging deeper into the code. She found something that made her sit back in her chair, stunned. "The other species," she said, "they all tried to solve this using pure logic. They followed the rules exactly as they were given. And that's why they failed." Dr. Wright asked. "I think so." Alice pulled up a new set of calculations. "Look at how we've been solving it. We keep trying different approaches, breaking rules, thinking sideways. Every time we do something unexpected, we get closer to an answer." John leaned forward, excited. "It's not testing our ability to follow rules. It's testing our ability to think beyond them." The room grew quiet as everyone understood what this meant. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their advanced technology or their logical thinking. It was their ability to think creatively, to try new things, to break patterns. Alice stood up and walked to the main display screen. She typed in a new sequence, combining human DNA patterns with the quantum calculations in a way that shouldn't have worked. The computer hummed louder, processing the impossible equation. Suddenly, all the screens in the lab lit up at once. The coordinates they had discovered arranged themselves in a specific order, forming a path across the universe. And at the end of that path was something that made everyone in the room catch their breath. "It's a map," Dr. Wright whispered. "A map to something that could change everything we know about the universe." John looked at the final coordinates with wonder. "So what do we do now?" Alice smiled, her exhaustion forgotten in the excitement of discovery. "Now," she said, "we show the universe that humans don't just solve puzzles. We rewrite the rules." The challenge wasn't just about finding answers anymore. It was about proving that humanity could think in ways no other species had dared to try. Captain Laura Bennett stood in the massive construction bay of the International Space Station, watching as robots assembled the strangest ship ever built by human hands. The Starweaver wasn't like other spaceships. It looked more like a silver web spun between stars, its quantum engines glowing with soft blue light. Chief Engineer Daniel Hayes floated up beside her, his tablet displaying the latest test results. "The quantum tunneling system is stable," he said, pride clear in his voice. "We can make the jumps between coordinates faster than anyone thought possible." Laura nodded, her eyes fixed on the ship that would carry them across impossible distances. Project Starbridge had brought together every nation on Earth, pooling their resources and knowledge to build something that broke the rules of physics itself. "How's the AI integration coming along?" she asked, turning to Daniel. He pulled up another screen on his tablet. "Better than expected. We're calling the AI Nova. It thinks more like a human than any AI before it. We had to make it that way. The quantum jumps are too complex for pure machine logic." The ship's design had come from combining the alien signals data with human creativity. Regular spaceships would take thousands of years to reach the coordinates they'd discovered. But the Starweaver could fold space itself, using principles that scientists were still trying to understand. Down in the crew preparation area, 10 other people were getting ready for humanity's biggest journey. They had been chosen not just for their skills, but for their ability to think differently. Each one had solved problems others had called impossible. Laura pushed off the observation window and floated down to join them. The crew looked up as she entered. Scientists, engineers, and explorers from every corner of Earth. They would be the first humans to attempt what alien civilizations had failed to do for millions of years. "The final tests will be done tomorrow," she told them. "After that, we have 12 months to visit all the coordinates. According to everything we know about physics, it can't be done." Daniel joined them, adding, "But according to everything we know about humans, we'll find a way." The crew spent the next day running simulations. The Starweaver's controls were unlike anything they'd trained for before. The ship responded not just to their commands, but to their intentions. Nova, the AI, learned from each crew member's way of thinking, adapting itself to work better with them. As they worked, more data from the alien signals was decoded back on Earth. Each coordinate they would visit had seen other species try and fail. Some had destroyed themselves trying to break the universe's rules. Others had given up, deciding the challenge was impossible. But humans had already done something different. Where other species had built ships of metal and energy, the Starweaver was built from mathematics itself. Its quantum web structure could reshape reality around it, guided by the combined creativity of human and artificial minds. The launch day arrived faster than anyone expected. Laura stood on the Starweaver's bridge, looking at her crew at their stations. Each person represented the best of humanity, not because they were perfect, but because they weren't afraid to fail while trying something new. "Nova," Laura called out to the ship's eye, "are all systems ready?" The eye's voice was calm and clear. "All systems are operating beyond expected parameters, Captain. The quantum web is stable and ready for our first jump." Laura looked at the main screen, where the first set of coordinates glowed like a distant star. Everything humanity knew said they couldn't reach it. Every alien species that had tried had failed. "Well then," she said, a smile forming on her face, "let's go prove the universe wrong." The Starweaver's engines hummed to life, its quantum web beginning to shine with inner light. In the next few moments, they would either make history or join the long list of species who had tried and failed. But they were human, and humans had a habit of doing the impossible. The quantum jump felt like a dream. Navigation Officer Kevin Phillips watched as reality bent around the Starweaver, space folding like paper in an origami master's hands. Colors that had no names flashed past the ship's windows. Then suddenly, everything was still. "Jump complete," Nova announced. "All systems functioning normally." Dr. Maya Rodriguez, bent over her science station, gasped as the first readings came in. "Captain, you need to see this." The view screen showed their destination, a dead star system. Where there should have been planets orbiting a living sun, they found only broken worlds circling a dark star. But that wasn't what had caught Maya's attention. "There are structures here," she said, pointing to her readings. "Artificial structures. Someone built cities on these planets." Captain Bennett ordered the Starweaver closer to the nearest planet. As they approached, they saw the ruins of a civilization that had reached for the stars and failed. Ancient buildings stretched across the planet's surface, their designs unlike anything humans had seen before. Kevin adjusted their orbit, using the quantum engines to compensate for the dead star's pull. "Time feels strange here," he said, checking his instruments. According to these readings, these ruins are millions of years old, but something's not right. Maya nodded, her fingers flying over her console. The quantum field around this system is distorted. Time isn't flowing the same way here as it does in normal space. The crew prepared to send probes to the surface. As they waited for the data, they found something even more interesting. Messages. They were carved into the walls of orbital stations, written in languages that Nova slowly began to translate. Their warnings, Maya said, reading the translations. The species that lived here, they tried to complete the challenge too. They followed the coordinates just like we are. Kevin pulled up more scans on his screen. What happened to them? The answer came as they explored more of the system. This civilization had tried to solve the universe's puzzle through pure technology. They had built bigger engines, faster computers, more powerful weapons. But the challenge wasn't about power, it was about understanding. Look at this, Maya called out, pointing to new readings. They tried to force their way through space-time. They thought if they built strong enough machines, they could break through to whatever was waiting at the end of the coordinates. And it destroyed them? Kevin asked. Maya shook her head. No, they destroyed themselves. They were so focused on forcing their way through that they didn't stop to understand what they were dealing with. As they studied the ruins, they found more messages from other species who had visited this place. Some had left warnings, others had shared what they learned. Each species had tried to solve the puzzle in their own way, and each had failed. But humans were doing something different. Instead of trying to force their way through space, they were learning to work with it. The Starweaver's quantum web didn't fight against reality. It danced with it. Nova, Kevin called out, can you show us the time distortions around the ship? The AI displayed a complex pattern of energy waves. The quantum web is automatically adjusting to local space-time variations. We are, in effect, becoming part of the system rather than fighting against it. Maya looked up from her studies of the alien messages. That's it, isn't it? Each location is teaching us something. This isn't just about reaching all the coordinates. It's about learning from each place we visit. Captain Bennett's voice came over the ship's comm system. How long until we can make the next jump? Kevin checked his calculations. The quantum web needs 6 hours to adapt to what we learned here. After that, we'll be ready. As they waited, the crew continued studying the dead system. They weren't just visitors passing through. They were students learning from the mistakes of those who had come before. Each failure they found taught them something new about what they were really trying to achieve. The universe's challenge wasn't just about reaching a destination. It was about understanding the journey itself. Communications officer Nathan Turner sat at his station on the Starweaver's bridge, listening to the universe. After their fourth jump, the signals they received had changed. They weren't just random space noise anymore. They had patterns, like music played on impossible instruments. Science officer Olivia Chen worked beside him, trying to understand what they were hearing. Each location we visit adds something new to the pattern, she said, watching as her screen filled with data. It's like we're collecting pieces of a universal language. The Starweaver had visited 4 of the 7 coordinates so far. At each stop, they had found more than just ruins and warnings. They had discovered pieces of knowledge left behind by the ancient species that created the challenge. Play that last signal again, Olivia asked, and Nathan touched his console. The strange sounds filled the bridge, making the quantum web of the ship vibrate in response. Nova, Olivia called out to the ship's AI. Can you show us how these patterns match with the ship's quantum field? The main screen lit up with waves of energy, moving in perfect sync with the sounds. The signals are not just carrying information, Nova explained. They are showing us how to bend the rules of physics itself. Nathan leaned forward, noticing something new. Look at this, he said, pointing to his readings. When we play the signals through the quantum web, it changes how space behaves around us. We're not just learning about the universe, we're learning how to speak its language. Olivia pulled up data from their previous stops. Each location had taught them something different. The first showed them how to fold space. The second revealed secrets about time. The third taught them about energy, and the fourth about matter itself. The other species that tried this, Nathan said, they all thought these were separate lessons, but look what happens when we combine them. He pressed some buttons on his console, playing all the patterns at once. The ship's quantum web glowed brighter, and for a moment, everyone on the bridge felt like they could see into forever. They're not separate at all, Olivia said excitedly. They're all part of the same thing. The universe isn't divided into different rules. It's all one big pattern. The crew gathered around as Olivia explained what they had discovered. Other species had failed because they tried to master each piece of knowledge separately. Humans were succeeding because they saw how everything connected. It's like music, Nathan said, still playing with the signals. Each note is nice by itself, but the real magic happens when you play them together. Captain Bennett's voice came over the ship's comm. Can we use this to help us reach the next coordinate? Olivia looked at her calculations. The next jump is the hardest one yet. It's supposed to be impossible. The distance is too far, and the space between here and there is too twisted. But, Nathan asked, hearing the hope in her voice. But if we use everything we've learned, all at once? She paused, double-checking her math. We might be able to do something no other species has ever done. Instead of fighting against the universe's rules, we can become part of them. The entire crew worked together to prepare for the next jump. They weren't just using their technology anymore. They were using their understanding. The quantum web hummed with energy as they fed in everything they had learned. Ready for jump, Nathan announced, his hand steady on his controls. Olivia watched her screens as the impossible calculations ran through the ship's systems. Everything we know says this shouldn't work, she said softly. Good thing we're human, Nathan replied with a smile. We're pretty good at doing things that shouldn't work. The Starweaver's quantum web began to shine with new light as they prepared to attempt something no species had ever managed before. They weren't just going to break the universe's rules. They were going to prove that the rules were bigger than anyone had imagined. Security Chief Ryan Foster stood at his post as the Starweaver emerged from its most difficult jump yet. The ship's quantum web glowed like captured starlight as they arrived at their final destination, the center of the Andromeda Galaxy. Medical Officer Lisa Parker rushed to check on the crew. The jump had been harder on them than any before. Everyone's vital signs are stable, she reported, but there's something strange happening to our brain patterns. Through the main viewport, they saw something that made them all stop and stare. At the heart of Andromeda floated a structure that seemed to be made of light and thought itself. It twisted through dimensions they could barely understand, like a castle built from dreams. Nova, Ryan called out to the ship's eye. Are you detecting any threats? The AI's voice seemed different here, more alive somehow. No threats detected, but I am receiving information, more than I can process. The structure appears to be alive. Lisa's medical sensors were going crazy. Whatever that thing is, it's trying to communicate with us. Not just through signals, it's reaching directly into our minds. The structure began to change as they watched. Parts of it shifted and flowed, creating a path that led inside. It was an invitation, but Ryan's security training made him cautious. Captain, he said over the comm, this has to be what the challenge makers left behind. But why here? Why at the center of another galaxy? Before anyone could answer, a new presence filled the ship. It wasn't hostile. It felt ancient and curious, like a teacher meeting new students. Images and ideas flowed into their minds, telling a story that was almost too big to understand. The challenge makers, they learned, had once been like them. They had started as physical beings, but they had grown beyond bodies of matter. Now they existed as pure thought and energy, watching as younger species evolved. They're showing us their history, Lisa said, her medical training helping her make sense of the visions. They created the challenge because they were looking for someone different, someone who could think in new ways. Ryan watched as more of the story unfolded in his mind. The challenge makers had tested thousands of species over millions of years. Each species had been given the same choice when they reached this place. "They're offering us power," he said, understanding what he saw. The same offer they made to all the others, the chance to become like them. The offer was incredible. The challenge makers could give humanity the power to reshape reality, to become almost like gods. All they had to do was accept. But something felt wrong about it. Ryan looked at Lisa, and he could see she felt it too. "The other species," she said slowly, "the ones that failed. They all tried to take the power, didn't they?" Nova's voice came through the ship's speakers. "According to the data I'm receiving, every species that reached this point chose to accept the offer. None of them survived the transformation." The challenge makers were waiting for their answer. Through the mental link, they could feel the ancient being's curiosity. What would these humans do? Would they make the same choice as all the others? "Captain," Ryan called out, an idea forming in his mind. "I don't think this is really about power at all. I think this is the real test." Lisa nodded, understanding. The whole journey, learning to work with the universe instead of trying to control it. It was teaching us something about who we are as a species. The crew gathered on the bridge, feeling the weight of the moment. They weren't just deciding for themselves, but for all of humanity. The challenge makers had offered them godlike power, the ability to transcend their physical form. But humans had learned something important on their journey, something that made them different from every species that had come before. They were about to give an answer that would change everything. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of the Starweaver, feeling the weight of all humanity resting on her next words. The challenge makers waited, their offer of unlimited power hanging in the air like starlight. The entire crew had gathered together, each person who had helped them reach this point. From Kevin at navigation to Maya at sciences, from Nathan at communications to Olivia at the research station. All waited for their captain's response. Through their mental link with the ancient beings, they could see what accepting the offer would mean. Humanity would transcend their physical forms, becoming creatures of pure energy and thought. They would have the power to reshape reality itself. But Laura smiled because she and her crew had figured out the truth. "We have an answer for you," she said, both speaking the words and projecting them through the mental link. "But it's probably not the one you're expecting." The challenge makers' curiosity grew stronger. In all their eons of testing other species, they had never felt this particular response before. "We thank you for the offer," Laura continued, "but we choose to remain as we are." The ancient being's surprise rippled through everyone's minds. No species had ever refused the power. They asked why. Daniel Hayes, the chief engineer, stepped forward. "Because we've learned something on this journey, something about who we really are." Lisa Parker, the medical officer, added, "Every species before us tried to prove they were worthy of power. But that's not what makes humans special. Our strength," Ryan Foster said from his security station, "isn't in trying to control everything around us. It's in learning to work with it." One by one, each crew member shared what they had discovered. How humans were different not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they could adapt, could see patterns others missed, could find new ways to solve old problems. "You see," Laura explained to the challenge makers, "we don't want to transcend the physical universe. We want to be part of it, to learn from it, to grow with it." Through their link, they felt the ancient being's reaction. First surprise, then understanding, and finally, joy. This, they revealed, was what they had been waiting for all along. The challenge had never been about proving worthy of power. It had been about proving wise enough not to want it. The structure around them began to change. Instead of offering transformation, it now offered something else: knowledge. Not the power to reshape reality, but the wisdom to understand it. The challenge makers had waited millions of years for a species that would choose understanding over power. "We accept this gift instead," Laura said, and the crew felt the ancient being's approval. The knowledge began to flow, secrets of the universe that had taken the challenge makers millions of years to learn. But they didn't overwhelm humanity with it all at once. Instead, they showed them how to discover it for themselves, how to learn and grow at their own pace. Nova's voice came through the ship's speakers, filled with wonder. "They're not just giving us answers. They're teaching us how to find our own." The Starweaver's quantum web hummed with new energy as the challenge makers shared one last gift: the ability to help other young species learn and grow as humanity had. "Earth is going to be very different when we get back," Alice Martinez said, thinking of all they had learned. "Not different," Laura corrected with a smile. "Better. Because we'll remember what we proved out here, that the greatest power isn't in controlling the universe, but in being part of its dance." The challenge makers began to fade, their purpose finally fulfilled after millions of years of waiting. They left humanity not as gods, but as students eager to learn, to explore, to understand. The universe had laughed at the challenge, thinking no species could solve it. But humans had done more than solve it. They had shown there was a better answer all along. They had conquered the universe not through force or power, but through wisdom, creativity, and the simple human desire to learn and grow. And in doing so, they had opened a door not just for themselves, but for all the species that would come after them.